what's the role of business in influencing that outcome? Whoever is chosen, South Africa needs to remain open for business and a destination of choice for investment so the economy can grow and jobs can be created. So as the politicians hammer out a deal, one business leader says there are key non-negotiables: the rule of law, judicial independence, and sound economic and fiscal policies. Fani Titi is the CEO of Investec and joins us now on the line. A very good morning to you and welcome to our program. I'm just wondering if he is on the line. Fani Titi, good morning to you. Can you hear us?
Good morning, Bongani, and good morning to your listeners.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. You are talking about how South Africans must embrace stability. How worried are you, though, about this fork in the road?
It is a pivotal fork in the road for our country. If you look back at the 30 years of democracy, the first 15 years were quite impressive. We were able to grow the economy at about 5% or so, create millions of jobs, and improve the standard of living of our people. The next 15 years have not been at all successful, and we find ourselves at a point where if we change course and choose the road of prosperity and opportunity, we could go back to a period where we can grow the economy in a more inclusive way, create jobs, and create a future for our children that is much more attractive. The corollary of that, obviously, is that if we make the wrong choices, we are likely to see significant capital outflows, we are likely to see less employment, and the country could be in a quagmire for quite a long time. So a pretty important period for our country.
I'll come back to those first 15 years where we did see growth. But right now, of course, certainty is the need of the hour, but things seem, to me at least, as clear as mud.
I think the parties have to swallow hard and find common ground. We need stability. If you look at coalitions in the metros, they're unstable. They don't engender any confidence. We cannot afford that type of instability and uncertainty at a government national level. We need policy certainty so that businesses can invest with confidence. In my view, this calls for a coalition, if not a government of national unity, that is centered on two or three very mature parties. The coalition obviously has to be inclusive because our country requires not only economic progress, but social cohesion. Too many people feel they have been left behind. So we have to achieve both economic policy certainty, but also social cohesion. So it is really quite a moment where cool heads have to prevail, and we have to put the interest of the country at heart. If you look at a country like Germany, where for decades you've had the two largest parties in coalition, and they've been able to move that country forward quite significantly. We hope something similar may well be possible for our country.
You talk about people who feel left behind. Are we not, in a sense, here precisely for that reason? Because many people would say that even in the years that we may look back now with some fondness in terms of the kind of growth we saw, even then, that strategy did not provide the jobs that were expected. Unemployment remained stubbornly high, especially amongst young people. We saw, of course, many skilled professionals from South Africa leave the country seeking opportunities elsewhere. And we can go on in terms of overregulation and the way and the ease of doing business in South Africa, that even those years we look on fondly weren't actually as great as people say they were.
I would differ with you on that score, Bongani. The numbers don't lie. If you look at the level of economic growth, if you look at the number of jobs that were created in that period, it was a good period for our country. It is fondly known as the Triple M period. Thabo Mbeki was president, Trevor Manuel was finance minister, Tito when he was governor of the Reserve Bank. Obviously, we lost our way, leading to the outcomes that you're talking about, where we have high levels of unemployment. So that then certainly calls on us to look out for a policy framework that engenders confidence, gets us to invest as the private sector, gets capital flows into the country to fund infrastructure, and in fact, get us on a higher trajectory of growth. Just as an example, if the economy grew at 1% more than the current trend, the fiscus would be able to collect approximately 100 billion rand more per annum. So that would give you the ability to invest, but also give you the ability to look after the most vulnerable in the country. So growth is important. To the contrary, if we have a government that chooses a policy framework that is anti-business, anti-investment, you could easily see the rand blow out. And when that happens, you could get inflation going higher, which makes the lives of the most vulnerable even harder. We have borrowings of about 5 trillion rand. If your borrowings go up by 1 or 2%, you're taking away money that you could be investing in infrastructure or, in fact, in a social safety net. So I do argue quite strongly that if we have a centrist government that prioritizes growth, we can see an absorption of some level of employment. We can see business confidence go up. We can see the general population being a lot more optimistic about our country. Our country has been at these types of forks in the road before, and we have been able to make progress. So I remain optimistic despite the severity of the risks that face us.
Well, let's talk about those risks. I mean, our democracy, as you say, has thus far proven itself to be resilient. But how worried are you about murmurs and threats of violence and unrest from some who have yet to accept the result? I mean, is another July 21 a real risk here?
There is some risk of instability. I must say, though, that the largest parties have reacted quite maturely to the election outcomes. In fact, the Liberation Party has freely accepted the results and encouraged others to do so. I think our security agencies are a lot more prepared for that type of eventuality. But what really would give us a sense of security is an inclusive political system and an economic policy going forward that generates more jobs, gives people more hope. So yeah, I would hope
Fani,
even in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, there will be.
If you'll allow me to interrupt you, we're being told a government of national unity that includes as many stakeholders and role players as possible would be ideal. But how do you do so? I mean, for example, let's take Umkhonto weSizwe Party. It has now emerged that its chief negotiators include someone like Tom Moyane, who all but decimated SARS, and not to mention, of course, Nathi Firepool Nhleko. How do you come up with an inclusive deal with the very people, you might argue, created some of these crises in the first place?
I think the larger, more centrist parties have, including the ANC, the DA, and a few others, have said it is really important that we commit to constitutionalism, that we commit to the rule of law. So I suspect that it may well be possible that certain parties may self-select out of such a government of national unity. But it is important that ab initio, that we are inclusive and we try to get as many people as possible, but that has to be centered on core principles of the rule of law, core principles of a social market economy that can give us the greatest chance of creating employment and creating prosperity. So yeah, it will be difficult, but we have to insist on certain core values as we go forward.
How concerned are you that the reforms that we've begun to see under President Ramaphosa may be derailed, even sacrificed for political expedience at this time?
As you said, we are at a fork in the road. If we go down the route not only of continuing these reforms, but making policy choices that are very pragmatic, that are pro-growth. In fact, we can see an acceleration of growth. We can see more employment being created. We can see the rating of our country improving with the consequence that we pay less for our debt and we have more investment. Obviously, if you have a government that takes a different policy stance, you will have exactly the reverse, that you will probably have an environment where skills may flee the country, that government will not be as accountable as we would hope. That government may not fight corruption as should be the case, and that there will be a level of wastage because you don't have the right skills, you don't have the right policies. Take as an example a situation where we start off with 80 billion rand investment in a power plant, and we end up much later with an expenditure of about 3 times that much. These are some of the consequences that can come across if we don't have firstly, a government that is effective, that prioritizes the interests of the nation first and foremost.
And often that power plant doesn't work even years later. Appreciate your time. Fani Titi, the CEO of Investec, there on the line.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.